What's up guys, it's me Jeremy. So we've finally gotten another official update about the upcoming Assassin roster update, and it looks like it's going to be pretty soon, to be honest. I believe they were predicting around patch 621 or 622 for the preseason update, and this update post is definitely packed with a ton of information about what we can expect for really just every champion that's going to be affected, as well as some new details about the stealth and item changes. So let's jump right into it and take a look at the future rework of Assassins. And if you guys enjoyed the video, definitely hit that like button and let's begin. So the first piece of information in the new post that Riot has given us is really focused on the changes to stealth and vision. So right now there's kind of like a ton of different kinds of stealth abilities in the game, and they're actually quite different in the ways that they can be used. At the same time, they're also easily countered by the same things. Pink wards, and really that's kind of just making things quite unfair in a lot of cases. A good example is something like, Evelyn's stealth versus Akali's stealth. It's actually very fair that pink wards reveal where Evelyn is, since that's kind of the way that's meant to be to get information about her ganks and stuff like that. But on the other hand, Akali gets one of her abilities made completely useless by just a pink ward slapped down in the middle of her shroud. So Riot are going to be fixing that when the update hits by separating stealth into two types: invisibility and camouflage. Invisibility is the new name that Riot is given for any short-lasting periods of stealth that are used mostly in combat. So stuff like Kha'Zix's ultimate, Akali's Twilight Shout's a great example. Those kind of abilities are going to count as invisibility. So pink wards currently reveal all stealth units, but once the update is live, anything that counts as invisibility will no longer be affected by pink wards whatsoever. So right now, the strategic value of those kind of short-term stealth bursts is actually quite poor because pink wards really just make it so pointless. So this change is definitely going to hopefully let those champions function a lot better at higher elos of play, where that cheap consumable item really just makes them so much more worthless than they otherwise would be. The only way invisible champions can be fully revealed is going to be by towers, so you definitely still won't be able to get dived on by an invisible Kha'Zix. So the exception to this is going to be Teemo's passive, since technically that is kind of a long duration out of combat effect, or at least that's why that's what they're classifying it as. But the difference with Teemo is that his stealth is kind of meant to be used strategically, kind of like the shorter term ones, but if he could be easily detected by proximity stuff like Evelyn's stealth kind of can, it would honestly just be a terrible passive and really just be so useless, really. And so other stealth abilities that last for a longer period of time and are mostly used outside of combat are being classified as camouflage. So this is stuff like Rengar's ultimate, Evelyn's passive, of course we've mentioned a few times, and these stealth abilities are probably going to be just completely unchanged, still detectable by pink wards, but Riot are definitely investigating new ways to detect champions because they kind of don't really like items being used as the form of counterplay. They really want you to be able to counter things through decision making. They don't want you to have to buy some arbitrary item or just happen to remember to buy this thing from the shop when you're at base. They want you to be able to counter or outplay things just from your decisions as a player. So one thing that they are definitely going to test out and could definitely make it into the game, especially for invisibility, is adding some kind of shimmer effect that opponents can see when they hit a stealthed enemy with a skill shot. That way they still kind of get a sense of where they are in order to follow them up and chase them down. The other thing that will also stay the same is that the red outline from the sweeper trinket when it detects a stealthed unit. It was kind of basically designed with that in mind as a secondary use outside of cleaning up wards. And Riot are actually okay with this item because it's free to purchase, so it's something that you can definitely prepare. However, I will say that it doesn't seem like they've made a set in stone decision yet as far as the stealth mechanics go, but I mean the big focus overall is really just making them have counterplay based on decision making rather than actual item purchases, as well as kind of just making them a little bit more clear and more consistent in general, so you kind of know what to expect and how to play against them. So the next thing Riot talks about is items, because right now they're really having a ton of problems with assassin items in general, and there's probably going to be a lot of changes as far as assassin itemization goes. So one of the things that they're actually having quite a few problems with as far as just the items in general go is flat armor penetration, which is kind of honestly probably the most popular stat to pick up for assassins. And the stat is definitely getting its own little rework or significant set of changes to fix those problems. So one big issue that flat armor penetration has is that it's actually pretty misleading. I mean, flat armor penetration is a stat that's really good against low armor targets because it makes your damage so much closer to true damage, but it's actually a terrible stat against tanks because tanks just get so much armor, which actually kind of sounds so silly and counterintuitive. I mean, it is called armor penetration. It's also kind of hit or miss because either you kind of buy your flat armor pen item and it gives you enough penetration to just wreck people and kill them before their natural armor scaling catches up, or they kind of just level up enough or maybe find a way to get some armor, and that makes your flat penetration so much worse than it otherwise would have been. And assassins are meant to be like mid-game powerhouses, but the flat armor pen stat makes them so much more one-dimensional than they need to be. So it's definitely going to get some changes that are going to be fixing that, whether that means removing the stat completely or just tweaking the stat or the way it works to better suit assassins in general. It's hard to say, but items that use it are definitely going to be revisited. So every item that has flat armor penetration is an item that you can expect to get some changes on in this upcoming rework. And it's definitely, they're going to be made with the focus of making them like true assassin items rather than items that kind of end up being viable in a bunch of different classes like bruisers and stuff. They want the items to be assassin only items, you know, and we're also probably going to get some new assassin items with that in mind as well, since right now they can kind of choose from like a small pool of items that's also shared by like 80 carries and bruisers rather than having like their own set of items to build towards. And so of course with that in mind, we can also expect to see the items that assassins pick up from time to time, you know, the items like Maw of Malmortius, like the non-assassiny assassin items, or like the non-assassiny items that assassins sometimes build. You know, those items we can definitely expect to be more tuned towards a fighter focus and not really be all that viable on assassins anymore, which means that they're definitely going to lose their armor penetration or whatever stat is going to be replacing armor pen. Next up, we're doing a quick run through all of the remaining champions involved in the update and really just what we can expect for each one of them as well. I mean, we've kind of already talked about quite a few of the champions. We talked about Rengar, Talon, Katarina, LeBlanc, and Fizz, which are definitely some of the larger reworks that are going to be taking place in this update. So we don't want to go too in depth here. We're just going to speed run through them, starting with Akali. We kind of mentioned her before a little bit, I think. She's kind of going to be updated with new stealth changes. She's going to be moved to the invisibility class as far as her stealth goes. So pink wards are not going to work on her shroud anymore, which is actually going to be pretty sweet if you think about it. And they're also kind of looking to give her some changes that give her more tools to outplay people, since her fighting style is kind of one-dimensional right now. But Akali is a candidate that will be getting a full rework later on in the future, so they're kind of just giving her some minor tweaks in the meantime. Echo is also a champion that's going to be getting a couple of changes, even though technically speaking he's kind of like a skirmisher, not necessarily an assassin. But this is a great time to talk about the tank builds of assassins, because Riot Reef 3 said one of the biggest problems with assassins right now is really just that they can build tank items and still just do way too much damage. So they're definitely planning to do something about that. And honestly, after this update, Tank Echo is probably going to be just not viable anymore. And it's definitely a build that they're trying to remove from the game. You know, they think AP Assassin Echo is a great build, but Tank Echo is just really unhealthy. And they're definitely going to push that philosophy a bit further with the Assassin update. Next up, we've got Fizz, which we kind of talked about a little bit in a video before. And really, they're just trying to fix up his laning phase, make him so that he can CS under turrets better, as well as kind of making him a little bit more flexible and giving him some more playstyle options. You know, he's definitely meant to be a really good initiator, but since a lot of the damage is tied to his E, he kind of loses out on some cool gameplay options. So it sounds like Riot want to move some of the E damage onto other parts of his kit, maybe onto a rework W, since that's probably one of the abilities that will be changing the most in his kit in general. But we can definitely expect to see a pretty decent amount of Fizz changes, despite the fact that he's being classified as one of the smaller reworks. Kha'Zix as well is an assassin that honestly hasn't really had that much love since his release. He's just gotten nerf after nerf. But despite that, he's still kind of decent, but he's not really winning when it comes to his flavor either. So Riot really want to push home the feeling of like evolving throughout a game. So we can definitely expect his playstyle to be something that changes a lot as the game progresses, and something that revolves a lot around his ultimate evolutions. They also want to keep isolation as his core gameplay concept, but instead of being about instant burst damage, he's going to be given given a little bit more ways to follow up and finish off his opponents, which means he might be losing some of the burst on his Q, but probably get some more changes to his ultimate so that he can keep triggering his passive for the final bits of damage, really. Next up, we've got Evelynn and Shaco, both of which are due for full visual gameplay updates in the future, kind of like Akali. Evelynn's not really going to be getting that many changes actually in this update, but Shaco will be getting a couple more tweaks in the roster update, just kind of as like a band-aid fix until they can spend more time working on him and give him a larger rework. So Riot's Shaco changes are definitely going to be focused on more like interesting interactions and just tricks like his mind games and stuff, rather than making him like this early game god and like this really obnoxious split pusher, which sounds like he's probably going to be a little bit more difficult to play since, you know, heading in for early ganks and then split pushing is really the way you want to play Shaco nowadays. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see how they'll compensate him for that. One thing we do know for sure is that all traps, including his boxes, are still going to be revealed by pink wards, so really knowing the best place to put them to catch enemies off guard is definitely still going to be really important, and he should still be a ton of fun to play. And the last champion, of course, that is getting some minor tweaks is Zedd. And right now, Riot doesn't really seem to be that happy that Zedd is kind of just like the go-to assassin right now in terms of like the meta, and he really has been for a long time just because he's so safe to play and he's still really effective without like a ton of investment or risk. And it sounds like they're kind of addressed that by changing the way that his death mark works, or at least changing the way he chooses which targets to attack. So essentially just giving him things to actually think about outside of pressing R on the easiest target to kill. He'll be way more effective against the champions he counters that way, but at the same time, he'll also be weaker against his own counters than he usually is. So you definitely won't be able to pick Zedd as your assassin just every time. He's probably, honestly, maybe going to get some nerfs with this change. We'll see though. And that definitely is going to summarize pretty much everything that we haven't covered so far that you can expect in the upcoming Assassin update. I mean, the general theme is definitely to make it so that Assassins won't kill opponents as quickly anymore and have more counterplay, but also to have more outplay potential on their opponents. So a lot of champions are going to be getting new mechanics, you know, things like soft crowd control effects, new mobility, delayed burst damage. Those are things that we can definitely see come from just the entire roster, really. Either way, though, that's just about going to wrap up all of the new information on the Assassin update. Definitely look out for patch 621 or 622. So far, it's looking actually pretty solid. It's going to be pretty cool. I'm definitely super excited for it. I mean, Assassins are some of my favorite, just such fun champions to play. And overall, it looks like this update's definitely still going to keep that fun element. Either way though, looks like that's going to be it for me. If you guys enjoyed the video, definitely leave a like, subscribe if you want. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.